Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is infuse, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Hassan Mohammed. Thank you so much for this suggestion. Now, let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb infuse can mean to fill or pervade. With this first definition, we could be talking about something literally filling a particular space or area, or we could be talking about something that is not so tangible or not able to be seen, filling or pervading something. A second way to use the verb infuse can mean to instill a quality in someone or something. This kind of connects a little bit to the first one. So, filling a person or filling something with a particular quality. We'll see some examples of that in some sentences a little bit later. A third way you might encounter the verb infuse being used can mean to soak something in liquid in order to extract the flavor or healing properties of that thing. So you might hear it used in connection to teas, herbs, or other items. Again, we'll look at some example sentences a little bit later. A fourth way the verb infuse gets used is in connection to medical treatments. And so generally that means we're allowing some kind of liquid to flow into a patient or to flow into a vein or something of that nature. For now, you should know that infuse is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, you're going to drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends in the pattern vowel consonant E. Then we'll add ing. That forms infusing. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by just adding the letter D since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, infuse, ends in a voiced Z sound. This means the ed ending is going to make a D or D sound. But notice, I'm not adding an extra syllable to the end of this verb. The past tense and the participle should sound like this. Infused, infused. Okay. Hope we can hear that D, not an id sound. Now, let's take a moment and talk about some phrasal verbs you might encounter. There really are just two phrasal verbs. They both can have the same meaning, but I think it's always helpful to have a few example sentences. So let's start our discussion by talking about the phrasal verb infuse into. One way to use this phrasal verb is to talk about adding an ingredient to something by either soaking it or steeping it. Steeping would involve really hot water. So, an example of this in a sentence might be, many people infuse lemon into their water. So, this is the idea of soaking pieces of lemon. Maybe some people might just use the rind, even to give that flavor to their water. Now, a second way you can use infuse into can mean to put effort into something so that someone learns or remembers something. An example of this might be, they have infused a sense of respect for others into their children. So, this probably took a lot of time, a lot of patience on the part of the parents to teach their children that we need to show respect for others and how that might look in various situations. Now, the second phrasal verb you might encounter is to infuse with. Just like infuse into, it could mean that we're adding some kind of ingredient to something by soaking it. An example of this could be, we'll infuse the turkey with rosemary, thyme, sage, and parsley. So sometimes people melt butter, add all of these herbs, and then kind of soak the bird or get things under the skin in that way to sort of add those flavors to that particular meat. course, that sentence comes from a number of different examples I've seen as people begin to prepare for Thanksgiving in the United States in the next couple of weeks. Now, a second way you can use infuse with might be to put forth effort so that someone learns or remembers something. So, another example sentence here. This teacher infuses her students with a sense of history and how regular people made a difference in this city. Sentence is probably discussing someone who focuses on some local history, maybe trying to get their students excited about what has happened in their particular community. Now, let's continue practicing our verb of the day. Today, we'll review the imperative and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the imperative. We use this to give commands. This can be done verbally or orally, or it could be done in writing. So we're telling someone to either do or not do an action. So there's no yes or no questions in the imperative. And the imperative is rather unique because we do not have a stated subject. The subject is implied or it's understood that it's either you singular if I'm speaking or writing to one person, or you plural if there are two or more people. To make a sentence in the affirmative, you can just begin with the base verb. You can see this in my example here. Infuse the oil with garlic for 5 minutes over medium heat. This sentence sounds like something that has come from a recipe, and that's a really common place to encounter imperative verbs. Someone is telling you the exact steps you need to do to prepare a certain dish. Now, if you want to make a sentence in the negative and imperative, what you would do is start with do not and then the base verb. You could also use the contraction don't and then the base verb. An example of this might be, don't infuse them with too much confidence. So here, maybe someone is trying to warn a mentor, parent, teacher type from, I guess, maybe being a little cautious not to overpraise so that someone thinks they're the absolute best and there's no room for improvement. One last note about the imperative. Sometimes students tell me they feel like it's rude to either speak or write in this way. So remember, you could always add the word please to the beginning or the end of either the affirmative or negative sentences. If that helps you feel a bit more polite, that is something you can certainly do. Now let's move on and talk about the present perfect progressive. Now, sometimes this is also called the present perfect continuous. It doesn't matter to me what you call it, but what we're describing with this verb tense is an action that started in the past, it's continuing in the present, and it may even continue into the future. The reason I say present perfect progressive is that it can help students sometimes remember they need to have 3 parts to make their verb. We're going to be using a present form of have, the participle been, and then the ing form of the verb. Now, there are 2 forms of the verb have, so we've got to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, then in the affirmative, our verb looks like this. Have, the participle been, B-E-E-N, and then the ing form of the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use has been, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. The medical community has been infusing antibody containing blood plasma taken from one patient into another for more than 100 years. Okay, so that goes back to that 4th definition of our verb. And again, we're talking about an action started in the past, still happening right now, and it's likely going to continue into the future. If I want to make a negative present perfect progressive sentence, then again, I'm going to pay attention to my subject, use either have not, been, and the ing form of the verb or has not been in the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. People who haven't been infusing their alcohol don't know what they have been missing. So this sentence is sort of back to I think it was maybe the third definition of steeping something or using herbs and other things. So they're all. I'm not a huge drinker, so I'm not going to be able to give really good recipes or advice here, but I know I've seen and heard people putting certain fruits and letting it sort of sit or freeze up, maybe making kind of ice cubes from various flavors. And again, it's trying to alter or enhance the flavor of their drink. Finally, let's talk about making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, start with have or has, then we'll have our subject, then the participle been, and then that ing form of the verb. Here's our last example. Have educators been infusing life skills into academic curriculum? Now, the answer in the United States has been a fair amount of yes. That might be some of that social emotional learning, as as well as other things that might help prepare older children for what's ahead as independent adults or anyone who might be living on their own shortly. Now, let's spend a moment and talk about a word that is related to our verb infuse. It's the noun infusion. This noun can have a number of different meanings. One way to use it is to talk about some kind of drink, remedy, or extract that's been prepared by soaking the leaves of a plant or herb in liquid. An example of this might be, have you tried their new citrus infusion? No, that's kind of a trendy word. Many sort of health adjacent businesses might promote certain kinds of juices or teas or things, and they might use this word to convey information about how something has been prepared. A second way to use the noun infusion is to talk about the introduction of a new element or quality into something else. An example of this might be the county's infusion of $1 million into local food pantries should help a great deal. This is a fairly common way to see the noun infusion used to talk about additional money or new money that is being put towards an initiative. A third way to use the noun infusion is to talk about the slow injection of a substance into a vein or a tissue. So this third definition, we're really only going to hear it in connection to medical treatments. An example of this might be, she receives weekly infusions to treat her arthritis. So that would be sort of an inflammation of joints, which can be incredibly painful, might result in swelling, and here is one kind of treatment for that particular disease. Thanks again to Hassan Mohammed for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.